I do love the Wednesday Women background, Melissa. It's very classy. Yes.
We got a brand. Well, it looks like we've just gone live, and everybody out there who's going to be dialing in is going to get to listen into a really good conversation today. So if anybody's just dialing in and you're right on time, hop on in. We would love everyone who joins to say hi in the chat. Tell us where you're dialing in from as you come on into the chat. And we're going to get started on time. Shocker, not always the thing that I do. But we're going to get started. I'm going to set a little bit of a tone for why we're here today and who we're chatting with. And then this is going to be an interactive conversation among brilliant women leaders on a topic that we've all had too much of already and we still want more of. So once again, welcome to everyone who's dialing in. As you come on in, feel free to put your name, where you're dialing in from. And I'm going to give us a little bit of context on why we're here today. So I'm Melissa. I am one of the co-founders of Wednesday Women. We are an organization that was built to amplify extraordinary women leaders across all industries and functions. And we do that through our global movement to amplify these leaders, as well as our executive membership. We host virtual interactive chats like this one on topics that really matter to executive women. They often apply to men as well. So if we have any men, welcome. It's a broad conversation for you all today. Today's session, like others that you're going to see in the year ahead, is a conversation among women leaders from their experiences, from their opinions, with your questions and a real interactive discussion. So don't be shy about putting your thoughts, your additional questions in chat. We want you as part of the conversation. Today's session, I want to take a quick moment and thank our sponsor for today. It's a company called Booth. And one of our executive members, Jen Spencer, if you're not following her, she's an amazing leader. Booth is a company that's a special partner for us at Wednesday Women because they are also a B Corp mission-based driven company. But if you need to fill any seats, one person or a whole team with extremely great high quality offshore talent in 120 countries, Booth is a great people to call. So thanks to Booth for making this happen. Why are we here? What's the particular topic? We're going to talk about AI, but we're going to talk about how we're integrating it at the leadership level. We're seeing, we'll get into our amazing guests right away, but we talk a lot about the tactics. We talk a lot about the nitty gritty. Many of you out there are shepherding this change from a very high level, and there's a lot of different questions that need to be asked. So without any more delay, I'm going to do a quick short intro to each of our guests, and then each of them is going to have a chance to say something right away on a topic that's coming up soon. So all three of our guests here today are executive members of Wednesday Women. We're thrilled that they're taking time from their busy day. We have Megan Barbier. She's the CHRO. I always get those acronyms mixed up at Xactly Corp, and she is leading integration from the people seat. MJ Patent is the CMO at Logically, who is a company, and she is also known for making complex technology really clear and actionable. And I think she's going to have a lot of that to say on how we're dealing with AI today. And Sophia Kindle is a strategic operations executive who oversaw AI transformation at Boeing. So we have three very different perspectives on this critical topic. Right before we get started, a couple of important guidelines. If you haven't been to a Wednesday Women event before, a couple things you need to know. First of all, we support each other and we stay positive. So please keep your comments all positive, and curiosity is a really great thing to bring to the conversation. We also like to reinforce that this is about the women behind the title. So we're going to ask these amazing women their perspective as leaders, but also as humans. And I would encourage each of you in the conversation today to bring both sides of you to the conversation, not just your work self, but the human behind your job. The final thing is, please feel free, if you haven't heard it already, drop any questions or comments in the chat. We will be coming to a Q&A at the very end. And we may also be pulling some of the questions into the discussion as we go. But please feel free to keep the chat lively with your questions in chat. And I believe that's it. So let's get started. These three amazing women, I'm like, I just want to let them talk. I'll stop talking now, everyone. I'd like to start each of you with one question just to get us kind of going. These are going to be, let's call them the softball questions, the fuzzy questions, the let's set the stage questions. I want to start with a real moment, a visceral moment. So MJ, I wanted to ask you if you could pinpoint kind of that moment in the last, when was it, a couple months, couple years, where you realized that AI was hitting hard and it was going to hit your plate and you couldn't necessarily just delegate it. Can you tell us a bit about that moment for you personally?
Yeah, so Logically in itself is a very AI forward organization, and we were all told like, "Hey, go off to the races, start doing things." I think for me, the moment was when it turned into chaos. Like everyone was off doing their own platforms and tools, etc. And there was no coordinated effort of understanding, okay, what are we doing? How are we going to measure impact? How are we going to share this across teams? And this can't be kind of a thing that you let loose. It has to be something that's concentrated and owned, and there needs to be process around it, because I'm talking to so many leaders, and we saw this internally as well. It can turn into the Wild West very quickly.
Well said. And Megan, I'm guessing my question for you is going to follow on this a little bit. Well, there's a lot of leaders who endorse AI, say, yeah, we need it. There's not a lot of them who are really stepping in to lead it. What do you see the differences from your perspective on the day to day about leaders who are actually stepping into it?
Yeah, I mean, and speaking from the seat of the latter, I think if you're not thinking about it as a transformational, I mean, and again, let me also be very clear. When I say leader, I'm pretty inclusive on that statement. So you do not need to have an executive title. You do not need to have a seat at, whatever proverbial table that's there. It's, feel free to lead. But leading through the transformation, I think the big difference with AI, and I don't think anyone did anything wrong in these initial stages, but I think a leader coming out with AI is thinking about, here's a new tool being deployed. This is not what we're doing. This is actually a transformation. And I do think that leaders that are leaning in aren't just coming to say, here's the new enablement, here's the new provisioning. That's part of it. It's actually re-envisioning the future to say, what's on the other side of this? What can this be? How is this maybe changing work as we know it and how we connect with each other? For me personally, I'm really, really focused and very, very big on making sure other people have the perspective of this AI transformation is maybe the biggest, most acute call to action for us to be human. And how are we going to preserve our humanity and do things that only people can do in the face of this amazing like technology tsunami that is hitting us? So when we think transformation, it really is moving across every aspect of our life, even outside of work. And leaders that recognize that, I think, the call that, MJ, when you said the Wild West, I literally pictured myself with like a sheriff badge and a posse and the whole like, cowgirl thing. But it really is like, how do you balance wading into that great unknown, bringing people along with you, and then also not restricting your impression of what this is going to be business as usual. What we did in the past is not going to work. There is a future that we are now launching into, whether we like it or not. So how can we lead through it?
It's a massive shift. And Sophia, I'm going to bring it to you to kind of give us I won't call this the softball question, but it follows on that. In our prep call, you were chatting a lot about, it's not just the technology, it's the change management, and Megan's word of transformation. Like, this is massive. Can you help us set the stage for why we should be talking about these beyond AI concepts when we're talking about integration of AI?
Yeah, one thing, first of all, I'm so happy Megan, as a CHRO, is leading this, because when you think about the impact of this transformation, it's so critical. It's huge. And it's just not in the workplace. I mean, AI, you can't get away from AI. We hear about it every day in every aspect of our life, but in the workforce, it is going to change how every employee comes to work and delivers value for the company that they work for. It's not just a tool, it is everything. It is how we reskill our workforces through our learning development, because what we did yesterday is going to completely look different than what we are going to do tomorrow. And so when we think about change management, and I've been doing transformation for the last 15 years, typically in many companies, change management is almost an afterthought. Um, a lot of companies bringing in at the testing phase, when change management in any circumstance or any transformation should be done at the very beginning. It is critical because of everything that Megan shared with us, that it is done at the very beginning for AI transformation, because the impact to the people, not just the tool, but to the people in every way that they do their job. If you don't have change management at the beginning, it will fail. And we're seeing that from a lot of companies. I think we're going to talk about a little later. The failure rate of just AI pilots. And I would say the biggest critical requirement is having change management at the very beginning of your transformation.
From this idea of, okay, we better start with structure and change management, back to MJ's point about chaos, there's a lot of pressures on leader right now to move fast, right?
Yeah.
MJ, what's your take on, have you seen those points, as you mentioned with the chaos, when people are moving too fast and where they're maybe not moving fast enough? I'd love to hear that, kind of where you think we're fitting in the speed
Yeah.
to execution.
So I sit in a very unique position because I am a go-to-market executive who happens to love tools and all of the latest, greatest tech trends, right? But at the same time, I also work with a lot of IT and cyber people. And so, having access to all of these companies that are going through this huge transformation in their organizations, and then seeing the dynamics. And really on my part, I am seeing a lot of functional leaders where they are getting pressured by the board. How are you implementing AI? How are you driving AI? What's the ROI on AI? Why are you not moving fast enough? And you're getting hit constantly. And marketing probably is getting them up. If you guys want to argue on me, but argue with me on this point, but I do believe CMOs, CROs, they're getting the most pressure on this. Why? Because we hit the bottom line, and it is the easiest to apply AI in the work that we do, right? And so we're getting all of this pressure. We're trying to go super fast. Well, guess what? IT's not there. And today I was having a conversation with peers from the Global Technology Industry Association about this subject. And they're like, you know what? The reason why these functional leaders are taking the step forward to lead this in their organization is the fact that their IT teams or their service providers are not equipped to help them through the change management. They're not equipped to develop policy and procedures, to develop governance within these organizations, to offer tools to enable these end users and these employee populations to move as quickly as possible. And so I think there's a lot of stuff we're doing from a functional standpoint where we're running after it and just implementing everything as quickly as possible for the board's sake. But at the same time, IT is not going fast enough.
Megan, I think you've been starting to feel that battle a lot as well. Do you have a follow-up to that from what you've seen?
I'm nodding in complete agreement. And I think, part of it, and this is one data point, part of the diagnosis is that I do think so many of our functions are operating business as usual. What did we do when it came time to go through, a security review and provision people in, pick your tech tool of choice? This is not that. And so I think that part of where companies are getting tripped up is on how we're applying rules of the past versus understanding what are we trying to do, permission to re-envision it. Something that we're actively doing at our stage as well. And I would encourage companies to do this, particularly if you were on the bleeding edge of AI adoption. Reevaluate those threat matrices and the risk map, because I think whatever was put in place, the technology is evolving so quickly. This is not an annual thing. This might not even be a quarterly thing. And how are we going to be constantly doing this very dynamic dance between mitigating risk and accepting an acceptable risk, defining what acceptable risk is, and moving forward anyway? And that doesn't mean that we, are casual about it or that we aren't compliant, but it does mean that what served us in terms of setting things up was typically, and I'm finding this true on a lot of companies that were very, thoughtful and I would say programmatic about it, is that it was around avoiding risk. And I think if we're playing from that place, that is not going to serve us well. So how are we going to define what now is acceptable in terms of moving forward? Another point too, and MJ, I mean, we need to catch up in real life and get like a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, and talk about the pressures that are on executives in some functions more than others, from the board, from the shareholders, around saving money. I am constantly crusading against this measure of AI outcomes. Maybe yes, one day, but you know what? I actually think it's going to get more expensive before it gets less expensive. And how do we define what that shows up as? Because this is not always going to be 100% quantifiable as a line item on your financials. This is going to look a lot of different ways. And so I also feel as leaders, we have a responsibility to control the pace of this dance, and take that with a grain of salt, right? Your own dynamic, your board, and again, there is a voice that needs to be elevated here. There's a conversation that needs to be had, and I would encourage, data is your friend here. Push back, talk with other people, but don't let the pressures of trying to demonstrate cost effectiveness steamroll what is right for your people or for your business. That's not hard, or that's not easy to do, but I think that's something that we need to be conscious of, finding opportunity to do more of that.
The reflection of, I think MJ's point too about those revenue driven pressures and how you're speaking to that, and giving them some words to put in place and say, whoa, it shouldn't be all about driving to revenue or cutting costs. Sophia, I want to flip it to the other side with, let's say what MJ mentioned, the potentially over restricted IT teams and being a little bit hamstrung in kind of how they can move, and maybe being the ones on the less risky side of this process. What have you seen from that end? It's kind of like the opposing views.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in highly regulated environments where the criticality of protecting your data and information, there's no level of risk that it is willing to be taken. And so I think where they're moving fast within IT organizations and trying to solve for those functions and groups that are outside of that, what they interpret that is they're moving slow, but what they're really trying to do is protect data and ensure that from a cyber and security perspective, that opening up the information and data to AI agents is a true risk and compliance um, issue in highly regulated areas. That being said, I do think there is a case for how you can move fast, smart, in ways that not in highly regulated environments, every piece of data, right, poses a risk. So where the risk is less, you move in those areas first. You identify that as you build out your plan. But there is going to be, in some cases, where data is critically protected, and there's lots of proprietary information there, that you will see IT moving slower. We've experienced that. Also, I think that the tool suite, right? MJ described it beautifully, where people are going out and getting it because there's this mad dash to leverage it, to use it, in some cases to show cost reductions as a result of it. That in highly regulated areas also is an area of risk, because you kind of lose control of where your data is, where it's going, who's seeing it, and what's even coming into your data environment. So I understand the need to move fast, but I also understand the need to reduce risk as much as possible, especially in highly regulated. I also want to make a comment on what Megan was just talking about around. Oh God, I just lost my thought.
I said
It'll
so
come
much.
back to
I'm
me.
sorry.
That's
I know.
why we need the wine.
Okay.
There were a lot of words there.
I bet
Okay. It'll
it'll
come back to me.
Well, kind of the thing that I was going to pull on that thread a little bit too is this idea of Well, actually, my thought just kind of went out the window too. Boy, we need to like have a little cup of coffee.
I'm
Every day is
telling
quick
you, we
coffee
should have
break.
had wine on this conversation. Well, and I will say too, and to that point, I mean, Sophia, I think something that, we kind of blew past, and I would love to, if I can back up on the freeway here, where this AI presence is going to be prolific. It is not just in our work life.
Yes.
And so in
Yes.
that sense, I mean, and I really try to leverage that mindset when I think about how do I creatively approach this. And so one of the things that I know I'm doing with my own team, we use Claude at Xactly. I'm obsessed with this tool. I love it. We are looking for ways to roll this out more broadly in the organization. Right now, our seats are restricted. So I have a long wait list of people that would love to get Claude. And I know that I have a threat of shadow AI. If I say no,
Yes.
my most aggressive people are going to go do it. And I kind of want to
Yes.
applaud that. And I also want to tell them not to do it. So one of the ways I'm trying to figure out, well, how do I equip team members to be workforce MVPs of the future? Well, go get your own personal instance of Claude. Don't you dare connect it to any of our stuff.
That's
but
right.
train yourself, learn how to build a skill, learn the
Yes.
difference between cowork chat and Claude Code. Then when you get your seat, you're already around the track one lap. So I think there's lots of ways that we as a leader can show up in ways that maybe it's not even circumventing restrictions or throttles, but it's more about how do we work within these so that we're not using it as an excuse or that we're not preventing our own development. And that's kind of one of the cool things when you have something so broad spread as this particular transformation. It's not just work. It's, well, this is me as a human. How do I connect with the work I do? Can I learn to build a gem on my own personal instance of Gemini while I wait for my org to catch up? That's not time wasted. And then that's a call to action to say, all right, let me be very clear. I'm not asking you to get a personal instance and now offload proprietary info into it, but I am asking you to figure out ways that you can build your skill, play around with this so that you're ready when we're ready, because you might be moving faster. So I'm always looking for those ways to get creative around it. And my team probably has a drinking game around this, but I say ethically creative. So because sometimes people can take those like, let's get creative, and you have like their bodies buried. It's no ethics, but creative ethics at the same time.
Well, Megan,
yeah.
Sorry, Sophia. I just want to make a point about like Megan's point about rolling this out on the organization. You like when you're considering doing that, you want to enable these teammates. Well, here's the thing: you picked one solution. What if they don't like that solution? And they want to use their own solution? How do you account for that? How do you govern and like, do you block that off? Because then they're going to put it on their phones. Like, and even in very highly secure environments, I will not call out people, but I know certain individuals that have put like, and they're in sensitive roles at the organization and they put it on their phone. So it's happening. So how are you creating that balance? And then from a cost perspective, think about you're paying per seat. And now you roll it out to your entire user base. Well, what if someone is using it really like a search functionality, because now a lot of search has shifted over there, while other people are these like mad, like crazy, like they're developing agents and they're doing all like they're these power users. Well, you're paying for everyone exactly the same.
Or if they're using it for personal use, like I'm planning my wedding on the company instance. Well, I don't even know how to, you kind of have to rely on people's goodwill and honor system and be very clear about the expectations. But we haven't solved for that because at some point I also don't want to know what you're prompting, but then I also kind of need to know, and you're blowing through credits and tokens on your own personal instance. How does the company reap the reward of that before making the investment? Like, I don't have an answer to this question.
Yeah. And then, for example, they leave and you lose all sight of everything that they have.
So that was actually the question that I lost my thread on, was this idea of education, right? So we can talk a little bit more about alignment and getting the executive suite aligned, but also like the education and the knowledge of your teams. How are we doing that right now? What is working? What is not working? Where do we see the pitfalls when it comes to shared knowledge of, to your point, MJ, it could be one tool and we're not going to do these. We're going to do these. Education and guidance. Talk to me a bit about that, what you've seen works or doesn't. I mean, Sophia, you had it at a massive company.
So with AI, I'm going to go back to cloud, right? So cloud and understanding how to manage an application in cloud is is very different. I think, and I heard during this particular transformation the term reskill so many times. Like, we got to reskill, we got to reskill. Think about, because what Megan and MJ just were saying, in that case, in the cloud case, it was concentrated to developers and app managers, right? This is everything, everywhere, in every aspect of your life. So we most companies in highly regulated environments are probably behind from a skill set or learning and development perspective than others, because outside of work, people are using this in everyday life. So when you aren't moving as fast as everybody wants to, or you're really hyper focused on protecting your data and you're not as advanced as other companies that are having AI transformations, learning and development or reskilling is an afterthought, because they're doing it in their personal life. And so where the companies that are kind of on a cutting edge and moving fast and are not so regulated, I think the whole learning and development effort has to be redesigned, because not only are jobs going away that people used to hold, I think on the other side of this, we want to think about who we want to be, and we want to reskill people to think about their job differently. It's going to be different skills. So if now I'm in a customer service or a help desk role that's now being managed by AI, I need to become an AI engineer, because what doesn't change is the environment, the business environment. It's going to continuously change. And so if you can re-engineer to keep up with the changes of the business environment, AI agents, then that becomes your value, not actually doing the work, but creating agents that know how to do it as environments change.
I have to pause on the phrase you said in there too, for everybody to hear it. We have to think about who we want to be on the other side of this, you said. And I think
Yeah.
that's true for both the company as well as
Yes.
the individuals in there. We've talked so much about just adding things on and building, but really actually stepping back and thinking, who do I want to be on the outcome of this? What does my company look like on the outcome of this? To that, I've seen a lot of companies publicly talking about, and I could probably point a few out, who have actually said, we're not just adding on or changing, we are actually pausing, going back to the drawing board and thinking from the ground up how we're bringing AI in. What have any of you seen on that front that may be, maybe a hard decision to make, to actually literally stop business as usual and go back there? Have you seen leaders doing that? Have you done it yourselves? What's your take on that?
I haven't seen it. I have from peers and other transformation leaders in industry have talked about how they tried to roll out customer service AI agents, and they didn't account for hallucinations.
Mm.
And so what they were seeing is that these agents were returning prompts that were not what they intended their customers to see. So they then had to roll it back. And it, even in I'm a Claude fan as well. Every return from Claude says AI is not perfect. So my belief is that humans need to remain in the loop. We can't just hold, there are certain human characteristics that AI cannot replicate. They cannot replicate human connection and engagement. As much as they try, they can't. They will not be held accountable for the decision making and the outcomes that people have to make. Your shareholders and your board aren't going to accept the AI agent decided that, or the AI agent decided to do that. So there are some things, there are critical things when we're delivering value to our customers and our shareholders that AI cannot assume. And that is why it's critical when we do come out on the other side of this, or even in the process of getting through this transformation that changes almost every second, every day with the capabilities and how it's done, that we make sure that we keep the human part a part of it in every aspect. Even if you're building whole AI agent teams, before work goes out, get human eyes on it.
Yeah, it's that idea. Like, I mean, if are we really in an AI transformation, or are we actually in the age of humanity? Because I do think
Yes.
like that is the biggest thing at risk right now. We're going to figure this out really quickly. And I don't think, I mean, we're talking weeks, days, quarters instead of years, decades, generations. It's going to move
Right.
so quickly. And I do think that, you know, even as we're talking here, you know, it comes so clearly that when we think about what does it mean to be a person at work, what does it mean to lead in this age, it is the connection, it is the context, it is, you know, the idea of, you know, I would love for us to be graduating from human in the loop to human on the loop, so that the work that we're doing as people with heartbeats is that high level, high value work. The
Yes.
agents are doing the work that we were never meant to do. You know, the reconciliation and the double checking and the massive, you know, the menial, the tactical. We actually are getting called to a higher purpose, which is the core of our humanity. See, now we're changing this to like a philosophy course, but it is, right? You know, this is
It
where I
is.
get excited, and yeah, it's a little scary, it's a little intimidating, but as a leader, I mean, and then I think too, well, if I'm going to show up leading through a transformation of any kind, I need to build trust. I need to be vulnerable. This is like the greatest call to action. I mean, they weren't going through this when they were building the railroad and setting up the telegraph.
Right.
I mean, this is the big show that I think we've all been waiting for. And those of us in tech, those of us in industry are feeling it very acutely. But I think it's truly a matter of time before this infiltrates every aspect of how we connect with each other. And we have a choice to either make it really great, or it could be really disastrous. I'm going to opt for the former, right? I'm going to index on that, but that's not going to happen by accident. We're going to have to think
Here's
through
a
that and be intentional.
here's a dichotomy that just racks my brain when I think about the big companies that have been coming out and laying off swaths of people with the idea that they're going to implement AI agents. Where was where was this thought? How is this thought the push now? And just like a second ago, everybody was saying everybody has to go back into the office, like back to work, back to office. Human engagement is so important. Why isn't it important now that AI agents can now do the jobs?
Yeah.
It just racks my, it doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
me. Um, yeah.
Does
I
it
just
feel like
thought that.
people are defaulting to just a comfortable playbook? I don't, like, I'm thinking about that. Like, well, what did we do in the past when things were rough? Well, we, you know, we did a big old riff. I'm being very callous. I'm not thinking this,
Right.
but you know, again, like, well, let's pull out what we did back in, you know, '05. And yeah, it's, I feel like maybe there's a default to just common practice, or right, you know, what did we do in years past versus how do we actually take a pause and rethink the moment now and build the future? Like you said, what do we want on the other side of this?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's leaders that really misunderstood, or they had non-realistic expectations of what AI was capable of. And so like we're in a world where we are now like at this instant gratification, right? And then you apply AI, and then like, and I know because I get sometimes frustrated. I'm like, why can't AI just like poof, and it like all appears and it's perfect. But the thing is, that's not realistic, right? Like applying AI into a process, like instead of it taking months, now it's only going to take a few weeks, but there's still a few weeks. There's still a human component there that you have to build into that process. It is not in 2 seconds and you have this thing and it's perfect, right? And when they do these cost calculations and then think, hey, we can lay off all these people because they're not going to be required. They pivoted way too hard. And so like not
Yes.
taking into consideration, then things started breaking. And now you're seeing companies going back and be like, we need to hire
That's
all the
right.
people again. Well, think about now the cost that you just incurred because the recruiting and training costs of the employees is so much
Absolutely.
higher. So you just shot yourself in like, and all of that gain you thought you got from AI, you actually lost it significantly because of that mistake.
I think I mentioned this briefly when we were chatting earlier, but there was just a quote like yesterday or today from Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, who basically said, anybody who's coming out and calling these layoffs related to cost savings of AI is cowardly. And I love that you put the word cowardly, because it's just like, it's an emotional, visceral reaction to, I got to save money, I got to chop things off. And we see this at every transformational point.
Yes.
I'm going to save money, I'm going to cut things I mean, yes, in some ways it's a natural reaction, but also as a real leader, he's like, that's cowardly. That's not leadership.
And some of it's branding too, right? Those pressures that I guarantee every one of us is feeling from the board. Well, I need to react. I need to do something. I might as well brand it as AI because it's believable. I'm not saying everyone is doing that. I also think there are some people that are doing it.
Yeah, and I remembered my thought because the same thing was happening with the move to cloud, right? And I don't know what it is about, and maybe it's boards wanting to save money, but wanting to be the first one to prove it out, right? So to MJ's point, all these people, like all these companies are laying off people only to see that the pendulum has swung too far, and now they're going to have to bring them back, and now you're even out more money. But during cloud, everything was get everything into the cloud. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be, and I'm part of a executive leadership group that we'd all come together twice a year and talk about our cloud transformations. And I'd say 2 years in, we were laughing at how we were all rushing to the cloud. All the costs went up because none of our application managers knew how to manage an application in cloud. And it's a subscription, and the more you use it, the more you're charged. When your application is in a data center, you don't have to optimize it. You just let it sit there. And people were doing that with cloud. So companies were losing tons of money. And so we came back 2 years later and were like, how dumb were we? Like, we actually lost money running to the cloud. I feel the same thing is happening. And MJ's example was perfect. Everybody's running to lay off people, thinking they're going to save costs, when in actuality, it's going to cost you more. It's
And we're
yeah.
seeing, I think you mentioned even at the tactical level, Sophia, you mentioned earlier, like rollbacks, right? There was a stat, one of our other members, Gwen, shared this stat that basically 62%, this is specific to customer function, but 62% had already had live AI agents, but then 74% of companies had rolled back what they'd already released. And I think she said with like governance mature companies, that was at 84%. So this idea of those rollbacks have legit costs on them. Every time we rush to what was the cloud, and I was jokingly saying now it's Claude, like every time we rush to them and we roll back, those are measurable costs. Every time we make these huge layoffs and then have to rehire and retrain, those are measurable costs.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I would love to just go one more question on kind of the layoffs and human costs, and then I'll kind of move us along a little bit. And this hour is flying by, so keep questions dropping into the chat, everybody. If you haven't, make sure you're dropping any questions. We will get to Q&A. Just want to kind of hear from you all as the human leaders that you are. What are you seeing in terms of this pendulum between AI versus human, right? Like, where are we on that pendulum? Where do you think it's going to be going in the next 6 to a year? And really from your own experiences, looking at like the human cost of where we're at. Would love to hear some stories. Megan, maybe as a people leader, you could start us off with a quick story, and then I'm sure we'll all have one.
Yeah, so I feel like you've really put me in a jam because you're asking me to predict in my crystal ball, which is a little hazy.
I'm pretty sure we promised everybody an answer to AI.
Yeah, spicy heat. But no, I mean, I do think that things will continue to move quickly. Yeah. I do think it gets more expensive before we recognize cost savings. And I think it's more, organizations now that are, realizing, wow, I have to fund tokens or credits, or, there's fuel that every query goes into. I think we're starting to see rumblings, and I believe within the next 12 to 18 months, we will also be hearing more demand from our people that we serve around the environmental impact of AI, and how are we actually fueling the brain calories of our AI, which is very different than a Google search. I think there's some level of consciousness to that, but I see that increasing if I had to, the practicalities of what this costs to run in AI first. So that's maybe the pieces that I envision. I will say that call to strengthen our own humanity is not going to go away. I would love to enlist as many people as I can to help me make that call louder, because I do think if we're just agentifying and dropping agents in and generating the work slop, and I think we're going to find ourselves in a pretty bleak space. So this call to action for us to bring our very best parts of ourselves that make us human into how we connect to each other, I think there's going to be an increased hunger for that, and we're going to be wise to deliver on that front. If again, I'm looking in my hazy crystal ball, those are the things that I think about, or I wake up in the morning thinking about these things. I drift off dreaming about them. These are the things occupying my headspace when I think about the teams that I'm leading. And I guess maybe a final note, if there's something that I know I'm personally taking into, the era ahead, is this idea of, what does it mean to be a leader? And I think trust and vulnerability are going to be invaluable. So we're all learning together, and I think we're all figuring this out together. I do think that that's going to start, the spread is going to widen in a very short window, where those that are ahead are going to pull further ahead. Those that are behind are going to lag further behind. But right now we have a collective. So learn vulnerably, let people see you figuring it out in real time. I do think that those are hallmarks of, regardless of your title, your position, or your function, anyone can do that right now, even if it just helps quell some of the anxiety or the nervousness or inspire curiosity. I think leaders that are building trust by being vulnerable and showing people that they don't know, or working in unison with others to learn, I think that's going to really set a foundation that we'll be able to draw from as the months roll on quickly here.
I love that. I feel like it's the time of the human-centered leader. There are human-focused, human-centered leaders, but I think this time will be the time where they do pull forward, and not the other type of leader.
That idea of what do we want to be on the back end of all of this?
Yes.
Putting the human part in there, like what are the things of human-driven nature that need to remain part of the business for it to be successful, and like almost starting from
Absolutely.
there and then building back into everything else. Yeah.
And then something that I think about, because my brain will just like take something and keep going. When you see these layoffs and you understand the roles that are impacted, a large percentage of our society have those roles. So when that large percentage of society is now out of work, how does that impact your economy? How does that impact the companies that are doing this? The people that buy your products now are no longer employed. So how is that impacting your costs are cut, but now your revenue's down as well, because you're impacting your customer base as well. So it's just the big move is a big impact and a big compound, not just on companies, human lives, but economies as well. And it's happening all over the world, right?
Here's one thing we touched on the prep call that I think all of us went, oh, that's a really interesting concept. I'm going to take it all the way down to a tiny human level. I think maybe it was Megan that brought this up, but correct me if I'm wrong. If you've got employees and they're using AI to do their job faster, this is a really fun question. Remember chatting about this?
Yes.
Is the time that they saved, does it belong to the company or does it belong to them? Debate.
Yeah,
I never thought of that, but I was like, oh my God, I don't know.
This one keeps me up at night. And I don't know the answer, but I imagine that there is probably a default that employees will think, there's a default the company is thinking, and they are not the same. So
That's
there's a reckoning or a golden spike that we could potentially get ahead of to drive that. Because I think if we don't, we're going to be reacting. But yeah, it's interesting who gets that benefit.
The fact that it's even being talked about, because in my experience, it's not even a question. Absolutely, the company owns it because they're paying you for a full 8 hours, whatever you're doing. But and this goes back to the human centered. Megan running this from a CHRO seat allows this question to be asked and then brings it forward to other leaders. Something that I think is unheard of, right? Like how transformations have been happening forever. Companies are always trying to get costs out. No one has ever, I'm sure, I know me as an individual contributor would have thought it, but never would you hear it at this level being spoken and then presented to an audience and other executive leaders. I absolutely love it.
I mean, I feel like, are there any Europeans on the call? I feel like the Europeans would be like, that's my free time. I'm going.
Okay, I'm gone. Well, and then I think too, there's been a huge push, I think, through a lot of organizations around this performance-based culture. I know we live that at Xactly where, it's not output, it's outcomes. And well, wait, we're being disingenuous to this if now all of a sudden we
That's
say
right.
it's hours now, right?
Right.
How do you do that? And then maybe that's again, redefining the unspoken contract, right? Do I create a culture where you get more than you give? And in order to do that, maybe that's part of my value prop now, where, well, you have the best AI tools, you deliver what you need to deliver, and then the rest is up to you, right? It's a really interesting challenge. And I also think it's going to be very complex in that not all roles will be created equal. So some roles will be able to maximize on this and others may not. So yeah, how do we think about now preventing, a class segmentation of the workforce in roles that are ripe for agentification and those that aren't? So we have fun times ahead, I'm telling you.
That's the thing that I was curious about. Do we at some point turn into into a society where our roles are based off of those, like our salary bands are tied to like explicit outcomes, and you can say like, hey, you're expected to deliver this much value, and so therefore your salary is here. You create more value, your salary goes up. Right? And is that a conversation now that is is available? And so if someone joins a company and says, hey, well, I've achieved this value thesis that you had for my role, why can't I use that additional funding, additional time in order to start a side business or do or spend time with my family or do you know what I mean?
Or go work for another company, right? I can do 4 hours here, 4 hours here, pull down double annual salary. I mean, again, the world of work could have crazy new parameters.
I loved your point, Megan. You at some point said that could be the new perk. That could be a perk for a business to offer is you hit your goals, you optimize, you use the heck out of the right tools and go get it done.
Yeah. Maybe we don't pay salaries anymore. Maybe we pay on outcomes, right? To the point, right? How do we structure value-based pay versus career band or comp-based pay? Wow. I mean, it sounds like HR is going to be pretty busy. So if anyone is looking to change,
absolutely,
I need lots of really smart people.
At this point, the CMOs leading AI are like, oh, thank goodness I'm not a CHRO over there, Megan. I want to be cognizant of our time because I do want to hit a couple of the questions that came in through Q&A. But as I prepare for those and start reading those, we're going to do a couple of quick rounds. So these are going to be 1 to 2 to 5 word answers. Okay, ladies. The first one is one AI powered tool that you use every day. Let's make it, you can do personal or work, whatever, every day. We'll go, I don't know, just MJ, Megan, Sophia.
Claude.
Yeah, there you go.
I work with Claude every day.
Claude and GPT.
We use Hats. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware of it, but Hats actually gives you access to over 50 LLMs, and it's all token-based pricing. So if you want to talk about that, hit me up. I'd be happy to demo it for you. But we implemented that internally, and now everyone is on that. So that way we don't have to chase all of the different AI tools, and it's and it's governed and secure. So that's the tool I would say.
Cool.
Is Perplexity like that too? I heard Perplexity uses several as well.
Perplexity is part of that as well. So it's listed on
one of them.
So it's HATZ hats.ai. I know everyone's like, what is this tool? Yeah, it's really cool.
All right, on a less tactical level, one word that you would use to describe where most organizations are, not your organization, we're not going to put you on the spot, most organizations are in their AI journey. What's your word?
Reactionary.
That's good.
Yeah. I because of where I sit and the people that I associate with, I think governance is the big thing. That's all I see.
I'd probably say exploratory. Mine's not just reaction, but trying all sorts of random things. Sophia, I cut you off.
No. I was thinking a word to combine reactionary and exploratory.
Reactionary. I'm going to pop into the Q&A and ask a couple of these real quick. So if you asked a question, we've got a couple in here. Clay had a great question about this idea of, or actually Clay, it was more of a, less a question, more of a statement, but I think we can turn into a bit of question. The idea of individual contributors needing to learn how to delegate with AI, how to manage AI. Have you all seen, or maybe one or two of you could speak to this idea of enabling your individual contributors really well to do that delegation and use their tools? I know we already talked about empowering them to explore on their own and bringing that learning back. We talked about enabling them with tools provided by the company. Other things that are helping your individual contributors to do that well?
I think having our first line managers as AI champions. So when you're building out your AI transformation, the most critical layer, I think, in the organization is those first line managers, because that's going to hit the mast of your workforce.
Mhm.
And if they are your champions, they will unleash that freedom and adventurous exploratory on their teams, their individual contributing teams. And I also have heard and seen where teams are gamifying it, right?
Mm.
So they are recognizing employees who bring tips back to the team, right? In staff meetings or in different other ways where they can like drop tips into the team's chat for your team. So I really believe that the key is your first line managers.
Great.
Yeah, heavy plus on the gamification. Humans love it, so that's
Yeah.
cool. And then I would say, all of the plus heavy on Sophia points. And then I would also add the biggest swings or the biggest leaps I see are when non-technical or traditionally non-technical people show what they can do. Because the beauty of
Yes.
AI is that it's accessible and it really dismantles these barriers. I don't need to know any coding. I can actually create this. And so I find that what's most inspirational is showing people the art of the possible. And I'm seeing that when we have somebody like our office manager roll out something amazing who doesn't know JSON or any other, Python, they can do it. Well, so can I. So I think it really makes it accessible, and it takes down this idea of, what do I do with it? I can't do it. I'm not technical enough. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
make it public. Sorry, that was and the fact that people can see it is so important.
Yeah, going off of that note, I would also try to highlight even like how roles are evolving, right? So like you're now like an AI orchestrator, right? Like can you change like the dynamics there? Like I'll give you an example. We had an SDR that, to Megan's point, like we wouldn't expect them to have technical skills. They were a powerhouse in AI. And they were building agents, workflows, everything. Like he moved into being a go-to-market engineer because of this. And then we highlighted that, like, this is how your role can progress outside of the norm. And that really like then inspires others to be like, maybe I should try this,
I love that.
I think that connects in beautifully to another question that's in chat. And I believe this came from our wonderful advisor, Carrie, who's probably on the call. Hi, Carrie. Everybody say hi. But I've had this question a lot too, especially with kids that some of us have kids at home, right? And we're thinking about this. For a lot of us, we learned how to do stuff by doing, and then we became the managers.
That's right.
Right now, all of a sudden, we're kind of empowering this younger group with a new set of skills, but we're also demanding that they become further up and ready to lead without necessarily having that hands-on experience that we thought was important. Would love the take on that. Like, how do we substitute that hands-on learning when now a lot of people can learn a lot of things right away because they don't really have to learn it. They just ask it.
This one of the things that AI cannot replace, and when you talk about leadership, it is lived experiences. So lived experiences are important. I've seen, and I'm sure we all have, that where people with technical skills get promoted to management positions and fail because they don't have the soft skills, right?
Yeah.
They don't have the soft leadership skills and capabilities. And so I think we have to be careful, AI or not, when you think about developing people to leaders. We all know when you become a leader, the work kind of takes a back seat and you have people management issues that you're dealing with most of your time, right? It's 80% of the time is people, 20% is work. As an individual contributor, it's all work. So if you take somebody that's technically savvy in AI and they've never had the people skills, you're setting them up for failure.
There's also, sorry, Melissa, like I just want to jump in on this point that this is going to put a lot of pressure on the leaders to explain the why, right? Because at the end of it, like, and I forget the exact fable, but it's like the whole idea of, you know, like a carpenter was asked to come out to like fix this like ship or whatever. And they're like, why did you charge me so much for like 5 minutes of worth of work? It's like, I knew where to like hit, right? And it is because of the 30 years of experience, right? Like with this new wave of employees that are coming in, it is going to put significantly more pressure on the leaders to actually explain and teach them either in like an apprenticeship or kind of like, you know, like mentorship capacity to teach them the why behind certain decisions. So that way they can start learning, why did we take that approach? What questions should I be asking to get to the thing that I need instead of like defaulting to AI? And I think we're going to see that in schools too. I think like, you know, I hope I wouldn't be surprised if some schools end up going back to like oral exams instead of using technology in order to test your like understanding of the subject matter and critical thinking.
I recently went to a talk from a gentleman who wrote a book about the cognitive impact or cognitive decline as a result of AI. So, how people are no longer writing their own, you know, there's something that happens when you write, and if you're just handing it over to AI. So, in his speech, he talked about we who develop that skill see a cognitive regression. Think about the children who will live in a world that they don't ever remember AI not being a part of it. So will they ever develop that? And to your point, MJ, how does that impact our educational systems and curriculum so that we still develop these skills, move to oral tests or non-technology testing and teaching so that we don't regress our cognitive development in our children?
I think that's such a fascinating point because we look at it as what are they not going to get? As opposed to actually thinking about it, it's like taking the typewriters away. It's like, well, my kids will never learn to do like the cha-ching, you know, on the typewriter or whatever. And like, oh, well, so then they don't know how to type. Well, they're typing in completely different ways. They're voice to text. Like, so there is this element of like the unseen future of maybe they're not going to be missing anything. Maybe they're going to have entirely different skills. But what, again, to the key point, what remains human? Like, what components are human that will always have to be taught? The critical thinking, like speaking your thoughts.
The personalization, right? I mean, if you're not putting your own thought and content, your voice is not your voice. You're just the voice of the LLM or the bot or whatever's created. So I know, and please don't take this as me figuring it out as the mom of 2 boys. You know, one of the things we talk about is, you know, don't be ashamed about AI. Don't lie to me. Use AI, use it boldly, but we're going to get really good at prompt engineering and we're going to treat it as a thought partner, not as your indentured servant. So you actually need to do the work and then check it, like ask it, use it to help creative. I hope they listen to me. We'll see. I don't know. But this is something that we're trying more of, just because what I also don't want to do is villainize it. We actually sat down and said, wow, they were doing something with AI and like closed the laptop. I'm like, oh gosh, what is it? And of course I'm thinking all these other things. They're like, oh, I was using Copilot. Like, oh, okay. Well, that's fair. Let's talk about how we use this well. Let me help shepherd you through this journey.
Well, and that's exactly the advice the author gave. He said, don't jump to AI to write an email at work. Write it first and then get feedback from AI. Like do the work yourself first and then just use it as a partner for feedback or things like that.
Well, I hope if any of you are still on here, which you all are, I can see everybody dialed in is still here. We're basically at the end, but this group of ladies and I could probably talk about this all day. Maybe next time we will all have a glass of wine in hand. But I just want to take a little bit of time at the end of the day to shout out a couple of things. First of all, if you aren't already following Wednesday Women, definitely please make sure that you are following what we're up to. We have conversations like this in executive membership in small groups, and we're starting to have more publicly like this. So if you want more discussions on topics that really matter in a real talk way, like MJ, Megan, and Sophia have given us today, definitely be following there. Let us know, reach out to the founders. We'd love to hear from you. One more also, thank you so much to our sponsor Booth. That's the reason we could all kind of be here today and have these conversations. We love working with them as a partner. And I hope anybody else who's looking to fill those functions with humans is really excited to give them a call. And I want to thank each one of our speakers for taking the time today, for thinking so hard about what is a very messy, complex topic. I don't know if we actually served up a perfect answer, but we gave lots of answers from which to everybody on the call can take those and run. And we'd love to hear from you. So I know you can definitely follow me on LinkedIn. Let us know what you thought. I'm guessing every one of these women, but also love to hear from anyone who is here today. And I didn't get a chance to do all of our around the horns, but I'll give you each just a minute to say goodbye. Where can folks find you? Or is there a resource you want to point anyone to? Maybe just take one last minute. Anything you got really excited about to share? Sophia?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Someone asked for the book. It's called
Yes. Ooh, Unreachable. Perfect.
Unreachable, Mohan Nair.
She had it right there. That's a great resource. Books are always great resources.
Yeah.
Megan, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm also on the directory for Wednesday Women. So feel free to find me. I can talk about this all day and promise if you just tell me you don't want to hear me talk and just listen, I can do that too. And yeah, I mean, I have been reading a ton of really interesting books and other topics on that. I don't know if I have a single one. I know I should have prepared a little bit better. But there is a book by Jeff Wood. I think it's the AI Forward Leader, and they talked about some ways to have really effective prompt engineering and having AI interview. Jeff is GEOFF. I think it's the AI-centric leader, AI-first leader, but happy to share that out in the channel as well for anyone that's interested.
Awesome. MJ?
You can find me on LinkedIn, MJ Patton, and we actually had an entire conference on this, and a lot about change and implementation practices across the organization. So I'll share like our workbook. It's full of templates, free templates you can use, questionnaires, etc. Share it with people who are in your organization that are dealing with this right now, just so you're looking at it from different perspectives of how you consolidate your efforts and make it effective. So I'll drop one so that way you guys don't have to form fill or anything like that, and you can share away.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to all of our guests who even stuck around past the hour. Come back for more Wednesday Women Fun later. And thank you all for thinking so deeply about this. We'll see you on the other side of AI.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.